Are we ready to go ahead with the workshop proceedings?
Yes.
Sure.
Namaskar and good evening. Once again, a very warm welcome to the workshop by TSDSI, IEEE-SA and SIA-India. A very warm welcome to distinguished co-chairs and all the panelists, and of course, a warm welcome to all our attendees who are attending this workshop. So, ladies and gentlemen, we now begin the proceedings of TSDSI, IEEE-SA and SIA-India workshop on standardization in satellite ground segment. And the time duration for this workshop will be approximately 45 minutes. The panel discusses the need, efforts, and developments on standardization and global harmonization that impact the satellite ground segment. Our distinguished co-chair for this session, Shri Udai Kumar Srivastava, is Senior DDG and Head NTIPRIT Department of Telecom, is an officer of Indian Telecom Service of the Government of India, and presently serving as Senior DDG and Head of NTIPRIT Department of Telecom, Government of India. Sri Srivastava has over 35 years of rich experience in the field of telecommunications and has led various units of Department of Telecommunication, Government of India, and Telecom Regulator in India, TRAI. He had also worked in ITU at Iraq and its headquarters at Geneva. A very warm welcome to you, sir. Our distinguished co-chair, Shri A.K. Mittal, is associated with TSDSI as advisor with special focus on standardization in wireless and wireline systems and handles standard-related activities of TSDSI and 3GPP and ITUR. Sri Mittal began his career in R&D at Indian Telephone Industries Limited and later joined the Department of Telecommunications, Government of India, where he worked in a wide variety of domains like satellite communication, OFC, microwave, mobile networks, switching systems, network management, licensing, regulations, standards, testing, and certifications, etc. And a very warm welcome to you, sir, to this workshop. And ladies and gentlemen, our panelists for this session are Dr. P.K. Jain, who is Associate Director, Frequent Management and Satcom Planning, Satcom PO ISRO, Dr. RangaRao Venkatesha Prasad, IEEE, Distinguished Lecturer, Fellow IETE, Mr. Abhishek Malhotra, Founding Partner, TMT Law Practice, and Dr. Neha Satak, CEO, Astrome Technologies. And ladies and gentlemen, with those words of introduction, I hand over to our co-chair, Shri Udai Kumar Srivastava, to kindly give his opening remarks and carry forward the proceedings of this session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gupta. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the virtual conference on satellite ground segment in India, Way Forward. I welcome co-chair of this event, Mr. A.K. Mittal, and eminent panelists, Dr. P.K. Jain, Ms. Neha Satak, Dr. R.V. Prasad, Mr. Abhishek Malhotra, and all the members of this audience. Good evening and welcome again. It gives me great pleasure to be part of this conference organized by SIA-India, TSDSI, and IEEE Standardization Association on this important subject, the satellite ground segments, a vital backbone to satellite technology. As already, most of you must be knowing how critical the ground segment is and how in Asia several companies are taking lead in the ground segment sector. India needs to step up its game in this area and contribute significantly to the global space sector through segment industry. For that, interoperability standard for space and ground system network is critical. There's an urgent need, therefore, to develop standards for global harmonization that impact the satellite ground segment. The sector needs laying down the engineering standards for telecommunications in India. DOT, of course, is committed towards working on bringing open standards, generic requirements, interface requirements, service requirements, and specifications for satellite products, services, and networks to expedite the satellite broadband and narrowband connectivity in the country. In March 2021, Telecom Engineering Center completely overhauled the erstwhile specifications, uh, the standard interface requirement, and it allows a lot of flexibility in the rules regarding the usage of antenna size, etc., for satellite firms to suit today's digital communication requirements, and thereby providing the much needed impetus for growth for the Indian telecom sector and serving the Digital India mission. New disruptive technologies like high throughput satellites, HTS, and non geostationary orbit and GSO stand to benefit from ground segment technology advancements. Uh, the DOT has allowed the VSAT operators to provide satellite based backhaul to communication service providers, making it easier for them to provide high speed broadband connectivity in rural and hard to reach areas. Nearly 50% of India's population is yet to be connected to the internet. So these measures may help service providers in expanding their reach in unserved and underserved areas. There's an effort internationally to establish a digital intermediate frequency interoperability standard based on digital radio standard VITA 49.2, most of you must be aware, which is well adopted by the industry. Both civilian and defense sectors have come to recognize the importance of adoption of an open standard that allows interoperability, shorten procurement cycle, and promote market competition. The satellite industry is changing dramatically, and India's story will be redefined with these large mega constellations of LEO and MEO satellites. Newer HTS new antennas will be needed to track mega constellations, driving a huge demand in frequency needs. Availability of spectrum is critical for both constellations and its ground counterpart. The focus of the policymakers is to define the standards so that everybody's equipment can work with everybody else's equipment. The government is committed to have an open minded approach to promote standardization, which will allow the companies involved to create new technologies and compete against each other on new capabilities. Capacity building in the telecom of the telecom professionals in government of India is the topic that is handled by the organization that I represent, that is National Telecommunications Institute for Policy Research, Innovation and Training. Uh, we have a lot of interest in learning about standardization, etc., and especially in the satellite communications sector. I look forward to the session and the panelists that would cover the key needs, efforts, and developments on standardization and global harmonization that impacts the satellite ground segment. I congratulate the organizations for this timely discussion on such an important topic and hope that deliberations bring some excellent policy decisions for all the stakeholders. I look forward to the workshop and listening to the esteemed panelists lined up for today's event. With this, I hand over to MC to take this event forward. Thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, sir, for that wonderful opening address. And may I now hand over to our co-chair, Shri A.K. Mittal, Advisor Network Systems and Technologies, TSDSI, to give his remarks and carry forward the proceedings of the session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Gupta, and good evening to everyone, and welcome to the esteemed panelists. And Mr. Srivastava has really, set the context right, and with his vast experience in telecom and especially in satellite communication, also, uh, I think we have the right beginning. And without taking time out of the limited time available for the session, I am actually eagerly waiting to hear from the panelists sharing their knowledge with us, all of us, and bringing out the essence of this panel about the standards in requirement of standards in the ground segment. So I will straight away, start, question with questions to the panelists. There is no specific order, but my effort is that we go with a flow that the audience also gets aware about the standards, why they are needed, what are the harmonization issues, what are the legal issues, and other things inside the ground segment story, which is opening up with the coming of satellite communication in a big way. So we have among us the ground segment or the satellite experts, not the ground segment alone, and we have a legal expert, Mr. Abhishek Malhotra. The way we had planned that Abhishek Malhotra would have given a final view on the legal aspects of the whole issue, but because of some pressing engagement which he has, we have so we have he has requested that he can be asked questions first so that he can free himself up as soon as his other engagement starts. So I will start with Mr. Abhishek Malhotra. So Malhotra ji, this you have heard Mr. Srivastava and uh, about standards. You may be also being a legal advisor to the industry. You may be knowing various aspects of the telecommunication and the ICT, what is happening, and especially there are concerns about privacy, data monitoring, data location, where to keep data and all. Now that was more we have been talking about on the terrestrial systems. So when it comes to satellite ground segment, the data passing through the gateways or the terminals, and then their storage, their processing, and whatever is the legal requirements. So how do you see these requirements impacting the standards per se? Any ideas from your side? Your views on that?
Thank, yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Mittal, and I apologize to the audience and to my fellow panelists for quote unquote going out of line. When someone goes out of line when you are standing in the airport, you always would like to tell him that please queue में आइए यहाँ पर queue लगी हुई है. But this time I am the culprit, so I will apologize in advance. But to answer your question, sir, um, in terms of the standardizations, when let's say I'm advising a client with regard to potential of liability, and hopefully the time when the client comes to me is where the liabilities has not already occurred, there is a possibility that they are trying to ascertain as to what are the potential issues that could arise from a legal liability standpoint. And that's the time that one looks to either what are the extant laws, or one looks to maybe the regulations that have been notified in that regard. And in the absence of any of that, then you will look to the what are the industry standards. In fact, even in the absence of the data protection bill, which is yet to become an act. I mean, the Joint Parliamentary Committee report has been circulated for the public domain yesterday, but we still do not have a law. Nevertheless, there are certain guiding principles and regulation that are in place for sector specific requirements. And in fact, under the IT Act, the only set of rules in 2011 that were notified in relation to protection of data and privacy aspects itself says that the in the absence of a specific direction in this regard from the relevant authority, the standards that have been made applicable for each industry at an through the ISO or any other sort of level need to be followed for cybersecurity or otherwise. So therefore, to answer your question, standardization becomes, especially in the case where there is no legal frameworks established to say that what the rights or liabilities could be. The law does not ever operate in vacuum, so it will look to some instrumentality. It will look to some sort of written document or basis of what the industry is following in order to ascertain what should be there. Now, the problem with specifically gathering of data, processing it, taking care of it, deleting it is still very nascent in India. And therefore, the issues that could potentially arise in the context that we are talking about in terms of the satellite ground segment are some that I wish to sort of highlight, and therefore to put forward why it is important for us to bring about those standards for the satellite ground segment and the use and the collection of data therein. And that cannot be done purely by the legislature or the legal experts. It will have to be requiring inputs from the august gathering that I am honored to be part of today, and a constant interaction to understand where those inflection points are, how the one can cover that, who to attribute the liability to. So, for example, factors that really determine the processing of data, which are essential for the purposes of the ground station's performances, those factors that could affect it are things like data volume. What is the mission requirements? What do you need in terms of the data volumes to satisfy those mission requirements? Where are the ground assets located relative to the mission parameters? What are the budgetary limitations? Are you going for open source software? Are you going for proprietary software, depending upon what your budgetary limitations are? What is the distribution and the makeup of the team? What is the affiliation of who controls the spacecraft? Is it a state actor? Is it a private party? And of course, the regulatory requirements. Now, the vulnerability points in the entire process could be attributable to, let's say, there are multiple system entry points, including, of course, the internet, and that makes it open for hackers to create disturbances or destabilization of the or that particular network. There is also the resort to the use of long-term telemetry, long range telemetry, which for communication purposes, which I'm given to believe, and I'm no expert on the technical side, I'm given to believe that it is subject to interception and tampering. Even the IoT instrumentalities that are being used are not very secure. Now, in light of the importance of gathering and collection of data to a mission requirement, and the vulnerability points that I have just identified, it becomes extremely important to have standards in place that mandate, in the context of how the data is being collected and how it is going to be utilized, to identify the data sets, the data assets, what is the methodology of collecting it, because the entity that is going to be collecting it would want to refer to a set of standards or a manual to protect itself from liability. What happens in the case of a data breach? What happens in case of a hacking incident? So it's important, now that we are moving towards a proliferation of non-state actors coming in as private parties, etc., and then the scope of engagement enhancing, it's important to have these standardizations and standards put in place even from this perspective. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Abhishek. I think you have rightly highlighted a broad spectrum of issues which will need to be addressed, and a dialogue between industry and policymakers is what is very important. And so there is an urgency around that because the services are right here at our doorsteps. That satellite, they are in the satellites are in space. They are ready to provide services, and resolutions are to be coming fast. So thank you very much for those comments. Now
Thank you.
I start with my first the next question with Ms. Neha Satak for setting further context on standards. So, as we know, we have been, I am myself and Mr. Srivastava, we are old timers in Satcom, and what we knew that, okay, we have satellite transmission, so, okay, we should, the sidebands, how much antenna pattern, sideband limitations, and inter-satellite, separations, and some other aspects of things which were more of regulatory in nature, which were being talked about. So now with this new kind of satellite communication wave, which is coming in a big way, what are the things you think that which are influencing the way forward, that there is a need for standards and harmonization of standards in this field? Can you throw some light on that?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mittal, for the question. So, just to give you a context, the audience, the context that Satcom is actually undergoing a lot of change, and it is expected to go, even further changes in the next few years, especially this decade. And the reason for that is that earlier satellite communication capacity was mainly used by very niche applications, for very niche applications, be it very, very remote defense application, or in terms of communication satellites, I mean. And now that trend is actually rolling into a very commercial, utilization of capacity from satellites with the upcoming low Earth orbit constellations. So what these constellations will do is they will make the available capacity in space, very larger than what it is today with the geostationary satellites. Second thing is that it will also create, data capacity which has good latency as compared to the latency that we, see in geostationary orbits. Because of that, I can say that we can expect a lot of this capacity to be used not just to, for niche applications, but also, applications like providing broadband internet to homes, powering towers, 4G 5G towers to deliver these kind of services in rural areas. And whenever there is a mass adoption of capacity and technology, I think cost comes into play. And from my point of view, actually standardization is very important, mainly because we want to ensure that there are ground terminals which are interoperable, not only between geo satellites but also between geo and leo satellites, the satellite terminals, the user segment terminals. And standardization can really help in terms of making sure that the scale is reached by anybody who's developing a ground segment. So it should not be satellite dependent, but it should be very much based on standards. Interoperability is basically the key, to reach that scale in pricing. So that's kind of what I think, sir.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so my next question would be with Dr. P.K. Jain. Uh, he's also a stalwart in the field of Satcom belonging to ISRO. So I would request him to give his views on this standards and harmonization part. Uh, Dr. Jain, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mittal sir. And let me begin with thanking or complimenting our SIA-India for organizing this, excuse me, the virtual seminar. It's very timely. Now, coming to the standardization and the global harmonization, certainly there is no doubt that the both global harmonization as well as the standardization are needed if you have to tap the benefits of the economy of scale. So there is no doubt about it. Now the point is that how do we achieve now in India, especially if you take the Indian context. Now I would say that I can say that 3 counts. The process should begin with the harmonization of the frequency band on to the different services, because again the ground segment is associated with the frequencies of operation and the space segment, and that portion, of course, the most of the part ITU takes care, and then afterwards the national frequency allocation plan by the DOT that should take care, and that it is taking care of also. So once the most of the part we address there as far as the harmonization, global harmonization is concerned. And then comes the role of defining the role of again the government or the regulatory DOT in our case, for defining the specifications or the interface requirements of the ground segment. And there that we see that the TEC wing of the DOT that brings out the interface requirements. And then the third step is the periodical review of those interface requirement and as well as the frequency allocation plan. So this is what generally the way we have to handle that, and it is being handled today in India also. Only thing we have certain challenges when it comes to the specific to the ground segment, because there are 2-3 counts. Ground segments are different for the different application, and sometimes it becomes vastly different. If you compare the DTH, whatever the ground or user segment is required, vis-a-vis the broadband or the VSATs, there would be a difference. Top of that, now we are seeing some emerging technologies like the high throughput satellite or the LEO MEO constellation. Now that adds another dimension. If you have to address the standardization and ask for the interoperability and other issues. The third part in this challenge is which is very important, is the addressing the frequency coordination or the interferences issue. Now, a particular ground segment for a particular orbital slot should have the different specification sometime, depending on the interference potential to the neighboring satellites. So it has its own challenges. Nevertheless, of course, the government has certainly addressed most of the things. Srivastava has rightly pointed out that in March 2021, we have brought out the IRGR document, interface requirement document for the FSS and BSS, and a lot of changes we have made there, made it much more flexible and open. And before that, we had brought the requirement for the IFMC. And now, of course, we need to further work on the, especially to address the new satellite constellation like NGSO, GeoMEO, LEO-MEO constellation, especially with respect to their tracking antenna portion and the other thing, because it involves both the satellite on the move and as well as for the broadband from the fixed services also. So these are some of the things which I thought that the salient points with respect to the global harmonization and the standardization. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. P.K. Jain, for bringing out, with such ease the issues which are involved in a much understandable manner. So what we see is that most of these issues are, around the frequency allocation and interference at the ground level and at the intersatellite system interference issues. Now, what is the next thing is, as we see, for example, in the terrestrial mobile systems, there's interoperability among networks. That means a mobile terminal can go from one network to another network and they can roam. So there is interoperability which requires standardization. Now here we have different kinds of systems. There are LEOs, MEOs, there are GSOs, and all that. So how LEOs and MEOs or whatever systems they are, how these are, typically different and how, they will affect the standardization, and what are the issues of standardization which are actually uh, industry is coming together to address. So I will start with Neha Satak to tell us that how, apart from frequency related coordination issues where we need some standards, what are the other things which need standards, and what are the industries looking at?
Yes. So, in terms of the standards, I think apart from the frequency, I think protocols, of course, require standardization. And I think there are some existing standards which already exist, like DVB-S2 and DVB-S2X. But I think these need to be extended further to address the current LEO constellations and the LEO, kind of satellites that are coming up, especially as compared to geostationary satellites. Now the trend will be that the ground terminals first of all need to track the satellite, be it electronically or mechanically, and second of all, I think there has to be, in the near future, it will also be very foreseeable that one ground terminal talks to more than one satellite simultaneously. So these are some of the important aspects which are evolving in the technology space, and these are the aspects which should also be brought into the standardization space, to make sure that there is harmony between standardization and what technologists are doing on ground for these constellations.
Yeah, thank you, Sneha. Now, IoT is, one of the fields which everybody knows now and talks about, and it has a big potential to grow. And satellite is one media where, in remote and inaccessible locations and everywhere where you want to deploy IoT, you can use satellite space segment, and it has its own requirements. Normally, we focus our energy towards providing communications to the humans, but when it talks about communication to the machines, when we use IoT, how the satellite communication networks which are coming, how they are taking care of these IoT, what are the challenges, and what are the solutions which we think are being worked out or will be a good solution. So I would request Dr. Prasad to throw some light on this, share his views on this.
Yeah, thank you, Mittal Saab. Thanks a lot for giving me an opportunity. May I share the slides, please?
Yeah, MC, can you start?
Yeah.
And I would request that the
Yeah.
slideshow may kindly be kept to a
Very
small
minimal.
time, because
Yes.
because we
Yes.
will be interested more in asking you
Sure.
questions.
Sure. Some of them I should be able to touch upon also. Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot. I work as an associate professor at Delft University of Technology in the Netherlands, and I'm also active member of IEEE ComSoc, IEEE Standards Association. So go to the next slide, please. Yeah. It's a very interesting topic. Ground segment, or just let us take it as ground station as a service. There are many things to really do. I don't think at this point of time whatever we have is something called stovepipes. So they are all concentrated on a particular satellite, or the satellites are groups of satellites managed by one organization. But we are now trying to build an internet-like thing in the near future. So in that sense, CCSDS and, for example, Spacewire, that's IEEE 1355, Space Packet Protocol, many things are now getting more and more traction. And then something that we really require, if you concentrate on the ground station itself, is modularization, and of course the standardization. Maybe I'll touch upon a little bit there. And whenever you talk about standardization or service, you also need to look at the quality of service. And the world has shrunk a lot. So in that sense, there is always the demand and supply market. These things are going to play a lot. So and then we are also not looking at one big player and then connecting him or her, but even individual consumers are going to be served almost directly. So in that sense, GSAS is going to be a very important, or it's going to play a very important role. Go to the next slide, please. With respect to next slide. Yeah. So there are many things to do of keeping the technology away for the time being, a bit away. The policies are going to play a big role. For example, I will not be able to provide service directly from the Netherlands. There are international policies that need to be looked into. For example, every time I want to use my university ground station to offer some service for education purposes, for research purposes and things like that, it's already a very big paperwork that we need to do. Lots of rules and regulations and the laws, and many things come into picture. We have to apply like 3 months in advance and provide all the details and take the permission of the radio regulators here. It's called Agentschap, Netherlands. So of course they are very, very fond of India, and then we have done something on this thing, but it is only bits and pieces. For example, continuously, if we want to bring multiple ground stations and then provide services, it's going to be a bit difficult. What I heard is that Finland doesn't want to offer something to India because India is part of BRICS. Why, I don't know, but things can happen like this also. So there is a lot of things to be done at the Delhi level. But yes, go to the next slide. Now I come to the important thing, that my favorite topic of IoT from space, and also I'm also looking at IoT in space. As soon as you have actuators and sensors, there is IoT anyway. So in that sense, there is going to be many things that need to be done. We have some payloads developed. So now just imagine that you have thousands of devices on ground station and on ground, and you need to connect. Of course, there are some things that are been demonstrated by Lacuna Space. They developed a IoT node, and then we also have from Swarm, that's a node that you could see the picture. But now just imagine taking a big picture where everything and anything is connected. This is going to be particularly helpful. Taking India into consideration, there are lots of areas where you would like to monitor. For example, 6 months back, there was a flood in Uttarakhand. You want to monitor minutely how the ground is drifting, and the ice, and many things, right? So it is important to have these sensors, can be just solar power operated, but still able to do something to provide the data. I'm just giving one picture, but I can always talk about, when time permits, a bit more. For the gateways, not only GSAS, there are multiple gateways which can talk multiple languages, multiple protocols. That can also be provided as a service, so that you can aggregate and then do things, and then you can also segregate and then provide the data back, for example. So you could see that there is many things to be done. Next slide. There are lots of work already happening with respect to optical ground stations of the future. Astrome is also looking at GPPS connectivity, Starlink, of course. There are lots of challenges. First thing is real-time service providing, and service as well as latency. Many new standardization are required. Probably people will be talking about this only in 7G. We are now at the end of 5G research. So I think with so much of active participation of ISRO in many of these things, probably India should aim at 7G, and then bring a big contingent, big part of 7G with respect to space. I will not go much detail thing into, but you could see the pictures, already the plans that people are already having, using lasers and others, so that you can really go for high data rate. Next slide. Just two more, I think. Yeah. There, of course, there is everything being operated remotely, right? So then software-defined radio, software-defined networking, they are going to play a major role. So if you provide services, internet services from space using these satellites, then naturally we have to already take what has been already done in the SDN and the SDR side into the fold. So again, many things to do, but these are more towards technology. But the previous ones I was talking about with more towards policies and the standards policies. But the standardization is all pervasive everywhere. Next one, I just want to show the IEEE Standard Association's web page here. You could see lots of possibilities. You can have an alliance, you can have a work group yourself. You just have to be a member, and from India, IEEE helps. Paying in rupees, it's not really much. I would definitely say that you should be participating. Even otherwise, just become a member, and then you can vote on many standards that are being developed. And you will also access to the standards in the making, and then you can have a say in a particular standard. That's a huge advantage. And of course, you can also start work groups, which you don't have to pay anything. IEEE provides you all the necessary service. Go to the next one. It's a simple, next slide. It's a simple life cycle of a standard development. You can initiate a standard project, and then it also be very democratically done. So anybody who is a standard
Dr.
association
Prasad,
member,
can we, Dr.
yeah,
Prasad, can we finish?
this is the
Sorry
last
for
one. Yeah. This is the last. This is the last. So anyone can actually come up with a standard project, and then it's also democratic in the sense that anyone who is interested, who is a member of Standards Association of IEEE, can vote, and the balloting can happen, and then your comments can be taken into account, and then it becomes a standard. And usually all these standards are open, so it helps the humanity. The last slide, I just want to say, if you change the slide, the last one, yeah. I raised a lot of questions, gave less answers. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Prasad. Yeah, in fact, you are right. You have raised more questions than answers, because it was really interesting to see that the possibilities of ground station as a service and future development of optical satellite communications. So they are real good possibilities, and the ground station as a service, I think, as an infrastructure deployment, is a good possibility, and maybe throwing up some challenges on the standardization front. So I think the time is 16:30. We may have. I can open. I think next 2-3 minutes we can have the panelists can ask any questions to each other for clarification, and then Mr. Srivastava also has a question on the panelists. So then he will have the last say on this. So any questions here among yourself? You want to discuss? I had too many, but there is there is a
So
time limit I have to adhere to. Uh, Jain Saab, you want to ask any question, or you want to explain something from your side, which you said you think that this audience should know on this occasion?
yeah, probably I would, not as a question, but anyway, so the policies and the lawyer, the advocate is not here, but I think we have to move very fast. Just a comment that we have to move very fast with respect to policies. And probably Government of India has to keep pace with ISRO. ISRO is developing lot many technologically challenging things. But we have to really move fast, because the world has shrunk. So there will be a lot many things to do with respect to international cooperations and the cross-country connectivity and things like that. That will help a lot in the technology. So I always say that it's like two legs, right? So policies, once it takes forward, futuristic, then the technology will keep up using the policies, and the technology will move forward, then the policy has to move forward. So that's how we can move further. Thank you.
Absolutely, what you said is right. Mr. Srivastava, you have questions to the panel.
Yeah. I think I missed one point, and maybe for the benefit of others or revision to others, uh, if I may ask, I think the standardization will be done at the IF level, because the RF will be different. Different bands will be used. Is it not correct? That's one question. And second is that, how would you decide, and how would you rate the G by T and EIRP limits of the ground stations, when you have within the LEO itself, you have got different heights of the satellite, and then you have got MEO, which has altogether different orbit. So how will it be done? Let the people understand. And if there is lot of variation in the specifications, and you want to accommodate everything in all, then cost consideration will get involved, isn't it? So any one of you can please respond. Maybe Neha ji?
Yes, sir. So actually, I would say the standardization needs to happen both on the IF baseband side and also the RF side. The reason it needs to also happen on the RF side is because for different frequencies, different standards, because there is also the issue of interference, with the frequencies, coexistence of basically Satcom with the ground. And that I think, Dr. PK Jain probably can throw more light on, how ISRO has also been working with the ground, terrestrial telecom infrastructure, how to coexist. My opinion would be that, standardization, from the digital perspective is a no-brainer that should, has already started, and it should, grow more with the LEO constellation. But also on the RF side, the emission, I think you mentioned that there are different altitudes, different EIRP of the satellites, but I think what matters is what is the maximum allowable EIRP from the ground terminal when it is transmitting, and that is a function of what is the interference it is causing to others, in the surrounding. So I think we can probably come up with standardization, keep not really how should I say, still addressing the fact that that one KU band terminal is going to talk to a LEO satellite, MEO satellite, and GEO satellite, because ultimately it's just interference based on the ground. Satellite, LEO satellites probably will have lower G by T as compared to, let's say, geostationary satellites, because they're receiving at a farther distance, so that the satellite can take care of. But the transmission from the ground should be just a function of interference, in my opinion.
Yeah, Srivastava, maybe
Thank
I
you.
may provide some more, maybe compliment what Neha has
Sure,
told.
sure, please,
Uh,
sure.
she's quite right in saying that it is the EIRP, the transmit power, which matters actually as far as interference is concerned. And the one of the major criteria for this interface requirements or standardization is basically to avoid the interference. And from that context, if you see, the G by T is really is not a very important parameter here. We need not even define the or standardize the G by T specification, because that leave it to the operators to decide based on their application, based on their network, what they do it. What is important for the regulator is that to ensure the interference free operation. G by T does not play any role in that particular thing as far as the interference potential from satellite network is concerned. Now, when the interference to satellite network it is concerned, that is addressed either by the frequency identification, or it should be left to the again the operators to decide their based on their application, even including the sizing of the antenna. Coming to the RF portion, if you see that even today we have the standard specification by the ITU also, like take the antenna pattern and all that thing. It is not based on the of course the frequency does play a role, but to some extent that a very wide range of the frequency they have standardized. And of course the multifunction systems and all that thing now, because of the technological development, they are possible. So probably the cost factor also could be addressed in that. So we have to take into account the entire all the in a holistic manner. It is not only the IF, it is RF, IF, baseband, and considering various types of emerging application. Like professor told that the IoT application, the narrowband, it's already TRI has given the recommendation that now we should work on that, bring out the interface requirement for the narrowband also. And then of course, as I mentioned earlier also, the for the Satcom on the move, the LEO constellation will cater to both the mobile communication as well as for the fixed communication. And those type of things need, it's a challenge, but I think it is doable and maybe in phases gradually.
That means a little bit of amendment of IR itself will suffice, isn't it? Okay, thank
Yes,
you very
you are
much.
quite right, because most of the things we can take care by updating
IR.
the interface requirement.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you,
thank
sir.
you, Shivastava ji. And thank you, panelists. In fact, the real technical discussion was just warming up, and we could have actually gone on the technical side. And I wish we had some more time, but time is ultimately a limitation. And but we got a very good indication of what are the issues and where we are heading, and what are the things we should take care in the coming days, and the level of urgency. Right, technology is not going to stop; it will grow. It is growing, and it is here the users are ready to use. So it is the mix of the service provider, government, policymaker, regulator, to put the entire thing into one place, so that they go without any hindrance. The services are available to the user at the earliest. So with this, while thanking all the panelists here, I close this session on the panel discussion, and hand
Yeah,
over to
thank you very
Venkatesha.
much indeed, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much indeed for sparing your time and being here with us at this virtual conference. And ladies and gentlemen, I once again take this opportunity to thank both our distinguished co-chairs, all our eminent panelists, and all the participants for joining us here on this platform for this virtual conference on satellite ground segment in India way forward. And now for the closing address, we have with us Mr. Rajeev Gambhir. Mr. Gambhir is the Senior Director, Technology and Policy, Satcom Industry Association of India. He's a seasoned broadcast media telecom professional with a career span of over 3.5 decades, working with optical, coaxial, terrestrial, wireless, satellite-based access policy, video and data delivery. And I would now invite Mr. Raj Gambhir to kindly close the proceedings of this virtual conference, Satellite Ground Segment in India Way Forward, with his closing address. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Sapna. Am I audible?
Yes,
That's
sir, you
something
are.
that that's something that we are used to asking when we start our talks these days. Okay. So let me thank you, Sapna, for the excellent stewardship of the conference.
Thank you, sir.
Uh, Ladies and gentlemen, it has been an honor to have all of you today from across the world. It's been an honor to have all of you with us today, and we thank and we are fortunate to have Shri Kumar, DDG Satellite, Department of Telecom, Shri K. Ratnakara, Director at Satcom PO at ISRO Headquarters, Shri Sanjeev Kumar, CMD at TCIL, Shri UK Srivastava, Senior DDG at NTIPRIT, Shri A.K. Mittal, Advisor Networks at TSDSI, and Shri P.K. Jain at ISRO, Satcom PO, and handling the spectrum planning and all. I thank you all for guiding us by chairing these sessions and discussing the related critical issues. Sometime back, I read something which was in right vein, that if space economy is the gold rush, that the ground segment is the peak access. So there will be space economy which will working around the communications, Earth observations, IoT, scientific explorations, but the ground segment is necessitated for all of them. So which one of the ones who are working in space succeed, the ground peak access will always be solved. The concept gains significance due to the timing when the regulator and policymaker have taken proactive consultations with industry to open up the market for Earth stations and gateways. As this vision gets actualized, we will see new business models evolve that will also see market creation, investment, and employment generation. I thank Dr. Subbarao Pavluri, our president, Mr. Bashir Patel from Inmarsat, Mr. Krishna from Hughes to set the direction of the discussions today with their keynote addresses. The conference was enriched by interesting discussions during the 3 sessions on technologies, business, and standardization. We recently went into MOU with the IEEE-SA, the Standard Association, and the special workshop was done in collaboration with TSDSI, who are doing some great work on the standardization front, along with IEEE, and we hope it served a good purpose. I do appreciate Shri Mittalji that we should have had more time, and I assure you we will have some more conference which will have more time for standardization. I really felt that it required more time. I believe many good experiences have been shared and good lessons learned. I thank all the experts from Astrome, Dhruva, Hughes, Intelsat, KSAT, Planet Aerospace, RBC Signals, SSC Space, Telesat, Thales Alenia Space, TU Delft, and TNT Law, who joined these sessions after taking time out of their busy schedules. The standardization will be happening across a lot of fronts, and interfaces and data standards are just the beginning. I suppose there is more discussions to be had around the inter-orbit obstruction or interference, and some, I believe there is more work to be done there that will be taken up in future. I can assure you this conference would not have been possible without all the encouragement from all of you, and also from policymakers, regulators, and industry at large. We have been supported in this effort by NITI Aayog, New Space India Limited, ISRO, Nalsar University, Kerala Space Park, TSDSI, US Chamber of Commerce, and US India Business Council. As a non-government, not-for-profit, industry-driven association, we strive to promote the use of satellite-based applications in civilian and defense space. Our aim is to the growth of the sector, and to this end, we not only interact at policy level, but also work with industry stakeholders, understand and act upon issues that help the industry growth nationally and globally. May I take this opportunity to encourage all of you to join the association as members, and let's do the work together. As with all trade, but especially for the space economy, the market developments transcend national boundaries and trade happens across the borders. We regularly interact with the industry bodies and associations across the world that helps the enterprises in this objective, and they have supported us in our endeavor today as always. And we are grateful to Access Space of UK, Antriksha of Nepal, APSCC, AVIA, ISOA, now GSOA, Geeks Without Frontiers, Global VSAT Forum, Planet Aerospace, Space Tide Japan, and SSERD. I'd like to mention here that a few weeks back, some brilliant minds engaged in the space ecosystem formed India's first think tank for the space industry. That's Spaceport Sarabhai for you, gents. We are privileged to have them as knowledge partners to this conference. A well-deserved thanks goes to our media partners, Satellite and Cable TV Magazine, Satai TV, Satellite and Internet Magazine, and Voice and Data. The conference was powered by platform from ThriveXT.com and Town Hall. We thank Mr. Manish Chabra for his excellent support before and during the conference. As we move into the festive season, let me take this opportunity to wish season's greetings that heralds a happy and healthy new year for all of you. With this, we have arrived at the end of the conference. We wish to see you all soon as our association members, as conference experts and delegates, and also by sharing your wisdom and knowledge with us. Till then, bye-bye.
Thank you very much indeed, sir. Thank you for the closing address. And ladies and gentlemen, with those words of the closing address, we now close the proceedings of this virtual conference, Satellite Ground Segment in India Way Forward. Once again, taking this opportunity to thank all our distinguished dignitaries, distinguished chairs, and moderators, all our eminent speakers and panelists for their valuable contributions in this conference. We thank all our panelists for joining us here. Thank you for your participation and making this virtual conference a huge success. Thank you once again. Have a wonderful evening ahead. Good night and namaskar.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.